And on WVNY TV.
From ABC, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings.
Good evening. We begin in St. Louis tonight, where one weather forecaster has been reduced to describing the weather in a single word: rotten. And what will really be disheartening to the people of the Midwest is the long-range weather forecast, which calls for above normal rainfall right into October, which has really focused people's attention on the staying power of their levees. Are they high enough? Are they strong enough? Today's news in St. Louis, which is protected by a 52-foot flood wall, was enough to make them nervous. There was a leak. Here's ABC's Tom Foreman.
City workers were scrambling last night to stop a leak under the flood wall protecting the north end of the city. By morning, it seemed under control, but with water still seeping through, a dike was being built as an emergency backstop should the wall give way.
The problem is that there is a hole developed on the riverside here, and water is going underneath the wall and coming out on the land side.
You're looking at something that's being set up temporarily to hopefully keep the water back. I mean, there's no guarantees. It's 50-50.
There is growing concern about the continued pressure of all that water against the flood walls and levees. For days, the river level has been expected to drop, but new rains upriver have kept it high. Levees are soaked, and groundwater is moving beneath them.
We're always concerned about underseepage. It's something that crops up after the flood has been there a while. It takes a while for it to occur, and if you don't contain it, you can lose a big area.
The persistence of the flood is creating other problems as well. Families who were forced out of their homes cannot go back to clean up. Others who are in threatened areas must remain on constant alert.
Yeah, it's one of the big frustrations. You know, it won't give up.
We always think it's going to get better, and it gets worse.
At this point, some public officials have almost given up trying to predict when the rain is going to stop, when the level of this river is going to drop.
The end of fall sound good to anyone?
So residents of the flood zones can only do what they have already been doing for weeks. Hope for the best, watch and wait for an end which is nowhere in sight. Tom Foreman, ABC News, St. Louis.
In South St. Louis this morning, a group of young boys had gone exploring in a local cave. They were trapped by a flash flood. The bodies of 3 boys were recovered from the cave. 2 other boys and an adult are missing. Even before the rivers subside, there is the problem of what to do with all the debris that raging rivers are leaving in their wake. Piles and piles of water-soaked, foul-smelling junk. An enormous part of the recovery process is getting rid of it. ABC's Mike Von Frem is in Des Moines.
Everywhere the water has been, it has left a path of contamination and ruin. As homeowners, hotels, and other businesses begin to clean up, the streets have become lined with debris.
It is destroyed. We're just waiting to have it hauled away.
Earth-moving equipment is being used round the clock to pile the mess into dumpsters, but it is simply more than the system can handle.
The volume is just overwhelming. The amount of damaged goods from inside homes and inside businesses is more than can be imagined until you get kind of the numbers.
Just in the city of Des Moines, officials estimate there are now 15 million pounds of trash that the flood produced. There is a traffic jam at the landfill. Workers are also trying to screen every truck to make sure there are no hazardous materials. Refrigerators and other appliances have to be picked up and disposed of separately because they contain freon and other toxic materials. Sandbags are a problem as well, because they've been contaminated by the water and may have to be buried. And it will be weeks before workers can clean up the polluted riverbanks. There may be only one bright spot in all this. For those who have lost their jobs due to the flood, state officials now say there are unlimited employment opportunities cleaning up the mess. Mike Von Frem, ABC News, Des Moines.
In a moment, we'll have the other news. The President's choice for Surgeon General explains herself today on Capitol Hill. There's been federal approval today for a new drug to treat multiple sclerosis. And this is Friday, so we'll have our person of all voice of conscience.
I got tired of talking about feeling fit, so I decided to do something about it. The hard part was putting the shoes on again. The easy part is eating Wheaties. It's made with 100% whole grain. Most cereals aren't. And Wheaties is a low-fat energy source. That's important. The kids made fun of me at first until they realized I could catch them easier, right? Right. I just like it when I feel more fit. That's why I'm getting into Wheaties.
Only good, healthy things grow in Mrs. Dash's garden, where Mrs. Dash has created a salt-free blend of 14 herbs and spices that give food a livelier, zestier flavor. Mrs. Dash, a garden of flavors in 6 varieties instead of salt.
Attention heartburn sufferers.
If antacids work, why do I keep getting heartburn?
You know, frequent heartburn may be a sign of a more serious medical problem. Your doctor has treatment plans that can help.
Frequent heartburn. Isn't it time you talk to your doctor?
On Capitol Hill today at her confirmation hearings, the President's nominee for Surgeon General talked about her basic philosophy. Dr. Joycelyn Elders told the senators, "I want to change the way we think about health by putting prevention first." Conservative opposition to her positions on abortion and contraception and questions about her finances touched off something of a political Donnybrook this morning. ABC's Jackie Judd is on the Hill.
The hearing was barely underway when the bickering erupted. A Republican senator who opposes Elders used an arcane rule forbidding committee hearings while the full Senate is in session. The stalling tactic infuriated Chairman Edward Kennedy.
I'm not going to be part of an effort to put this over for another week, another day, and to permit the scurrilous accusations to be made against this nominee.
Another angry Democrat jumped in, saying it was time for women nominees to be treated with dignity.
Could we proceed?
They proceeded, but only long enough for Joycelyn Elders to read her opening statement. Since the rarely used ruling was in effect, the hearing had to be recessed. The Republican responsible for the delay, Don Nichols, went to the Senate chamber to explain himself. He complained that too little was known about Elders.
Questions need to be asked. Documents need to be provided, evidence needs to be shown, so we'll find out the real facts.
When the Senate adjourned for the day, the hearing could resume. Elders seemed flustered when quizzed by Republicans about her husband's failure to pay Social Security taxes for his mother's nurse.
I don't feel that it was a violation of the law in regard to me, but, you know, I think it was an error that was made.
Another Republican asked the usually blunt-speaking Elders if she really had advised teenage girls to always bring a condom on a date. Elders said she was trying to encourage protection, not promiscuity.
What I was really saying for the girls, I said, don't depend on the young man to say, I don't have one. You make sure that you have one.
Overall, Elders seemed to weather the scrutiny of her critics. An administration official said today they have the votes for her confirmation as Surgeon General. Jackie Judd, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
In Little Rock, Arkansas today, the funeral for Vincent Foster, the deputy counsel at the White House and the longtime friend of President Clinton. Foster apparently killed himself this past Tuesday. The president delivered the eulogy. Foster's body was then taken home to Hope, Arkansas for burial. As he left the White House this morning, the president repeated something he has said often since learning of his friend's death. I don't think any of us will ever know exactly why his life ended the way it did. Mr. Clinton's confusion is classic among people who have been left behind when a close friend or a relative commits suicide. Here's ABC's Beth Nissen.
Those who take their own lives leave so many behind. Family and classmates, friends and teachers, people from the house down the street and the office down the hall. They are left with so many questions and so much pain.
Oh, it was an absolute shock. One minute he was in the home, and the next minute he was jumping off the roof.
Betty Hayes lost her only son at 22.
I mean, it's still to me almost unbelievable that that man would pick up a gun and put a bullet through his head.
Joe Pesaresi lost her husband of 20 years.
I just feel cheated. Get the chance to say goodbye.
Kurt Weirock's older sister hanged herself. 30,000 Americans take their own lives every year. Most are white men. Only 1 in 4 leaves any note. Their suicides leave circles of people asking the unanswerable.
I want to know why he did it and what was going through his mind when he did it.
Even chance acquaintances can feel profound guilt.
Everyone feels that they could have been the one that could have made the difference. They could have been the one that saved that person.
There are hard edges of anger.
It's a fact that we're alive, and it's a fact that we can do something with our lives, and she's forfeited an opportunity to do something with hers.
With time comes all there will be of understanding.
I just assumed that he, at the end, was a sick man, and I loved him dearly, and I'm trying to do the best I can.
Those left behind do the best they can to remember that no one person can know the mind, read the heart, or control the life of another. Beth Nissen, ABC News, New York.
We'll have more news in just a moment. The Food and Drug Administration has approved the first drug to treat multiple sclerosis. It is called beta-serone. 350,000 Americans suffer from MS. There is no cure. This drug is intended to provide relief for some of those who suffer. Here's ABC's Bettina Gregory.
Suzanne Merchon is a manager at an insurance company. She must be able to read computer reports to do her job. But 2 years ago, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a degenerative nerve disease which affects vision, movement, and balance.
Sometimes my vision will just start to blur, and then it'll gradually get worse and worse and worse. And on top of that, I have balance problems, numbness in my arms, my legs.
But help may be at hand. Some victims of MS can use this new drug, beta-serone.
This is the first time there's ever been a drug that will actually treat the disease and not just the symptoms.
The government says this new drug will help at least 30% of those with MS, those with milder forms involving sudden and unpredictable attacks. Clinical trials on more than 370 patients showed that injections of beta-serone reduced the frequency of attacks and made the symptoms less severe. Beta-serone will not help those who have chronic or persistent forms of MS. Today's announcement says beta-serone is not a cure, but there are promising reports of other drugs still being tested on laboratory animals which may bring science closer to the cure MS patients are waiting for. Bettina Gregory, ABC News, Washington.
But what to do while they wait for that cure? It is a measure of how much suffering MS can inflict and how desperate people are for something that might help. But a good number of patients are suddenly appearing in the Maryland town of Waldorf, seeking relief in an unusual place. Here's ABC's Bill Greenwood.
3 days a week, victims of multiple sclerosis come to the home of Pat and Ray Wagner, crowding in by the dozens, convinced that miracles happen here.
Gotcha, huh?
The secret? Bee stings. Pat Wagner says she's living proof that bee venom helps ease the symptoms of MS. She was partially deaf, blind, and paralyzed until she tried bee therapy last year as a last resort.
If you were in my condition, you'd eat the bark off a tree if somebody told you it would work. So instead of eating bark, I got bee stings.
Medical researchers agree that venom from honeybees does stimulate the human nervous and immune systems. And because of the effect it had on Pat Wagner, the family is anxious to share their bees with anyone who asks, free of charge.
Hurts like a son of a gun, but I'm feeling a whole heck of a lot better.
Patients slowly work up to 20 stings 3 times a week. Nancy Burkhart is a first-timer. Her legs have been numb for the last 5 years.
But you can feel the same thing over here? We have feeling. Isn't that a wonderful change?
The medical community is highly skeptical about this treatment, but professional researchers are also highly interested.
Doctors caution that people with severe allergies to bee venom could have a fatal reaction. Still, clinical studies of the therapy are in the works.
Certainly, the history of medicine is rich with examples of folk medicine becoming mainstream medicine.
Faye Curry is one of Dr. Rickard's patients, but says the bee stings help more than her prescriptions.
I'm walking better, stepping over things better.
The bee venom does seem to provide relief for most of the people who come to the Wagners, and it gives them the hope they need to keep going until a cure can be found. Bill Greenwood, ABC News, Waldorf, Maryland.
Well, it's quite a leap to Wall Street, but today the Dow Jones Industrials gained 21.5 points to close at 35.46. The trading was moderate. For the week, stocks gained about 18 points. When we come back, an anatomy lesson. from Adam. Not to mention the rest of the country, you're still wrestling with the cost and availability of medical care. We have a report tonight on a new piece of technology that may actually help. It's a computer program. It's called ADAM, which is short for Animated Dissection of Anatomy for Medicine. ABC's Jim Slade on how it works.
Leonardo da Vinci was the first medical illustrator, studying corpses to better understand how the human body works. He would have loved this computer program. This is ADAM, software that can present 4 different views of every one of the 6,000 unique structures in the human body. It took a team of medical illustrators 3 years to produce it, doing every drawing by hand. ADAM was designed to teach. Completed just this spring, the software is already being used by both students and faculty at nearly 100 of the nation's 126 medical schools.
The ADAM program is a major breakthrough in the teaching of medicine.
Now, through video or computer conferencing, programs like ADAM may allow doctors to treat patients a county or a continent away. ADAM was recently featured at a demonstration performed at Dartmouth for President Clinton's health care advisory team. It showed how high tech may lower health care costs, in part by letting doctors see more patients in less time.
Well, you can have somebody sitting here in an office and he can do 5 consultations in an hour in 5 different parts of Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Whereas if he were doing this in real time in his office, it would take him 5 hours.
It's also hoped that by keeping patients informed about their conditions with a program like ADAM, doctors could reduce malpractice claims. Here, the software is being used to explain to a patient in another location how he tore a ligament in his knee and how it will be repaired.
We're going to drill a couple of holes.
Some of the things we've seen here would allow consumers to understand better and help make better decisions about what's happening to their lives.
One fan of ADAM thinks it might even attract young people to medical careers.
This is another kind of video game. They know how to play a video game, and now we're putting in their hands knowledge that leads them to understand science.
There is a female version of the software, which includes this segment illustrating pregnancy. As you might expect, the female portion of ADAM is called Eve. Jim Slade, ABC News.
The other night we reported on a group of children who'd been abandoned without food or water at a mental hospital in Fonjica, Bosnia-Herzegovina. A team of British medics has now arrived, and instead of treating field wounds, they're now changing diapers. They will stay to take care of the children until the regular staff, which was driven off by the local Muslim militia, comes back. So far, only 4 of the 40 staff members have returned. We'll have more news in just a moment.
World News Tonight with Peter Jennings and the Person of the Week.